the Virginia Tech Hokies, one of the more historical football teams in the ACC. You know, they had all that success when Frank Beamer was there. Got to a national title game, which they lost to Florida State. And really, they had sustained success with Beamer. And then when he retired a few years ago, they brought in Justin Fuente, who took them to an ACC title game in 2015. And people thought that the Hokies were just going to be one of those consistent programs that always had at least maybe a 7-win or 8-win season. And it just didn't really work out that way. A couple of bad seasons with Fuente at the helm, and then he was let go. And then Brent Pry comes in, and first of all, I'd like to say regarding Brent Pry, I stated in a few videos ago that he was a first-year head coach this year. He is not. This is his second year at Virginia Tech. So I'd just like to get that out of the way real quick. I apologize to my Virginia Tech fans watching. But let's look at the departures on that squad from last year that went 3-8. Didn't play that 9th game because of what happened at Virginia last season with them canceling their last 2 games because of the unfortunate shooting that happened involving the football team. But you lost some edge guys, Kyrie Moisten and Antoine Powell, and you lost wide receiver Dallin Wright. But really, you know, when you have a team that goes 3-8, I wouldn't be too discouraged by losing a few guys to the transfer portal. You know, I looked at the overall transfers that you had exiting the program, and mainly they were 3-star guys, and the people that you were bringing in were 3 stars, and I think 1 or 2 of them were 4 stars. So really, you're having a player exchange like most programs have nowadays because of how open the portal is. I think the defensive line, those losses will be significant, but what you're bringing in is strengthening another position group, particularly in the secondary and the wide receivers. Because you bring in Ali Jennings III, who's a wide receiver. Kyron Jones comes in from Baylor, which is, you know, you're looking for a quarterback to spark this offense that only averaged 19 points last season, and that really killed you in a lot of games. You know, you had a 1-point loss to NC State. It was a very winnable game for Virginia Tech, and that was kind of the story in a lot of their losses, was that they were close, but they just couldn't get that last drive near the end of the game to win. Yeah, they had a 1-point loss to Georgia Tech as well. They had a 1-possession loss to Miami, and they had a 1-possession loss to Old Dominion. So if you flip those games by a last-second drive offensively where they kick a field goal or score a touchdown in the Miami game, who knows what happens with kicking a field goal at Old Dominion. You know, you go to overtime, anything can happen. So they could have easily been they could have easily had 7 wins if a few things went differently. So I don't think I would be too discouraged if I was a Virginia Tech fan, with the last season being Brent Pry's first season. So a lot of promise all around. But yeah, you're having a bit of a quarterback battle with Kyron Jones coming in. he could be the starter. He showed a lot of promise from what I've read at Baylor. They were really excited about him on the depth chart. But who knows? But with strengths and weaknesses, your secondary is your biggest strength, because you brought in Derek Canteen, a cornerback from Georgia Southern, who in 2020 led the nation in interceptions, or at least was tied. But still, to have a guy like that on your team is a massive asset. So you're bringing back a lot of guys on the backside of the defense that have experience. They've seen these very good wide receivers that are in the ACC and outside of the conference, in terms of Derek Canteen, who comes from a different team. But yes, your absolute strength this season will be your secondary. I think your big weakness is offensive line. They're a little bit of an inexperienced group, still trying to learn the new offensive play style that Brent Pry wants to run. Though I do think they got a lot of good experience with the guys that are coming back from last year. And I don't think overall it will hurt them with a lot of the opponents that they're playing. And you'll see that in my prediction overall with the season of how I think Virginia Tech is going to do this year. But with that being said, let's get into the schedule. You start off week 1 against Old Dominion. Now, Old Dominion's upset Virginia Tech twice now. And with that being the case, this one is absolutely on Virginia Tech's mind. I think this is a win. This is them finally proving that they aren't going to have any more troubles with Old Dominion. They're done with this losing to a non-Power 5 opponent in their own state. They're tired of hearing about it. They will win against Old Dominion. And they've had problems in the past. Virginia Tech, even when Beamer was there, I think they lost to ECU. They lost to James Madison one time. But it was usually those one little blips, those outlier games, and then they righted the ship afterwards. And Brent Pry, it was his first season last year. A lot was uncertain about what the team was going to look like, how they were going to adjust to the new system. I think Old Dominion caught them a bit unprepared, but not the case this year. I think you'll be fine. You get the win against Old Dominion at home. And then you host Purdue. Purdue does have a first-year head coach this year after Jeff Brom left. And, on the road in Lane Stadium, a very electric crowd. They love, Enter Sandman. It's so iconic. Wanting to improve upon last year, all the guys you bring in, the fact that Purdue does have a new head coach, and they're replacing a lot of pieces from that team that went to the Big Ten title game. I think you get the win. I think Brent Pry has you more prepared for this game, and you get a big non-conference Power 5 win at home. And then you go on the road to Rutgers, back-to-back weeks with Big Ten opponents. Rutgers kind of in the basement for the Big Ten East. They've really struggled against opponents in their division, like Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan State. And, it's kind of hard to blame them. Those four programs are elite every year, and they're Rutgers. So what are they really going to do? They would have to have some magical quarterback to lift them up offensively, and just hope that they have a good enough defense to put the program on the map, sort of like a Lamar Jackson, or maybe a Robert Griffin III, or even a Johnny Manziel. Just that talent level to bring them back to prominence. But there isn't anything indicating that, and Virginia Tech, with the players they're able to recruit from Virginia and the talent level that they can actually get with the history in football that they have, and looking at the rosters up and down, I think you get the win at Rutgers, simply because overall, top to bottom, you are a better team. And then you go at Marshall. This is kind of a weird game on the schedule, a non-Power 5 road game. You did the same thing last year when you went to Old Dominion. Marshall did upset Notre Dame last year, but when things like that happen, usually the other Power 5 teams take notice. They're on alert now that a team like that has pulled off an upset, and it can happen again occasionally. Boise State, they had two really big upsets. They upset Oklahoma and Arizona, both in the Fiesta Bowl. But they're few and far between, and I think Marshall's on people's radar now after that Notre Dame game last year, and I think again Brent Pry has you prepared for this game because he knows he can point directly to that Notre Dame game that happened last year and show his team that they can compete, and they will give you your best shot because you are a Power 5 team coming in. So Brent Pry is ready, and they get the win. Then you host Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is the only other team in the past 8 years that has won the ACC in football, aside from Clemson. And I think this is a loss. Pittsburgh likes to run the football. They don't have Abanikanda back, but I still think that they are able to execute that pro-style run that they like to use, and combining that with Phil Drakovic's throwing ability, I think it's just too much of a balanced attack for the Hokie defense that, while they will excel in the secondary, is still trying to find itself on the defensive line, and they just allow Pitt too many rushing yards. They get comfortable in the running game. They have to bring people into the box, and then Phil Dracovic can throw it deep to his receivers, and that gives Pittsburgh the win in Lane Stadium. Then you go at Florida State. Florida State is supposed to be one of the best teams, not only in the ACC, but in the nation. Jordan Travis is a Heisman Trophy candidate. That defense is elite. I think talent-wise, Florida State is far ahead of Virginia Tech. I think Jordan Travis, just his ability alone to run, is going to hurt Virginia Tech a lot on defense. I think this is a win for the Seminoles. I think you take a loss. I think Florida State is just too much for you right now as a program. Then you host Wake Forest. Wake Forest is sort of in a transition period, not with head coaching, but their offense. They lost Sam Hartman last year, and I think that really affects them this year. Their system with Dave Clawson's offense is very effective against teams. We've seen it in the past, but no one ran it like Sam Hartman did. Sam Hartman got them to the ACC title game by running that system as optimally as it could be. And Mitch Griffis, while he is good, I just don't think he will be able to match the same offensive production. The defense that Wake Forest has gives me concern. And so you beat Wake Forest. And then you head into your bye week, come out of your bye week, and you play Syracuse. Syracuse is a very good secondary like you. They're a bit more in tone on offense with Garrett Trader and Aronze Gadsden coming back. With that experience and that chemistry already established that they're building off of, I think it's too much for the defense yet again. I think Garrett Schrader and Aronde Gadsden put up numbers on you, and it's too much to overcome for the Virginia Tech offense and the defense, and you take a loss at home. You go on the road at Louisville, which is under the direction of Jeff Brom this year. I am not as high on Louisville as a lot of people seem to be in the media. I think they will be able to compete. I just think that with the system changing offensively from a run-heavy, scramble quarterback to a pocket passer will be a drastic of enough change to cause some offensive troubles. I think they'll get it figured out by year 2. I just think that it's going to take one season of struggles to get that figured out. With that being said, though, going on the road at Louisville, Jeff Brom's going to give every team that the Cardinals face a fight. And with that, I think you get upset by Louisville on the road. I think you'll be favored in this game. And I think this is Louisville's signature win this year, is beating Virginia Tech. Then you go on the road at Boston College. Boston College, defensively, again, great historically, their secondary this year, they had a lot of losses. And with that, the people that you bring in at wide receiver, the new quarterback battle that you have, I think you'll be able to throw it against Boston College, and you'll be able to run the football. And because of that, I think you get the win at Boston College. And then you play NC State. NC State comes in with Brennan Armstrong and that historically good defense with Tony Gibson at the helm. They were the only team in college football last year to allow 30 points or less in all of their games. They've got a very stable program. They won a game with 4 different quarterbacks. It was really, really impressive last year, even though they only won 8 games. But, I think this is your upset. I think this is your signature win this year, is beating NC State. I think they'll be ranked in this game. I have the Wolfpack going 9-3 with a win over Clemson, and I think they will be ranked, and this will be your ranked victory for the season. I think Lane Stadium comes in with an electric crowd. They're fired up to play a ranked team at home because you don't have one currently on the schedule. And that energy just translates to the football team, and they get pumped, they get energized, they come out, they play a great game on both sides of the ball, and it's too much for NC State to handle, and you get the win. Yeah. And then you go at Virginia, the historic rivalry game that happens every year. Virginia Tech has owned Virginia this century, and I think that continues. my heart goes out to the Virginia football team for what happened last year. It's something that should never happen to any group or any community. But, football is football. And I think the Hokies are just better than the Cavaliers this year. Not to say that Tony Elliott is a bad coach. As I said in my Virginia video, I think he is the right guy to build Virginia back to a contender. But it's going to be a long process. And especially with what happened last year, I think the process probably got a little bit longer. Just emotionally, that it's so hard to overcome something like that. And I think it's still affecting them. I don't think that they've gotten over it. And I don't expect them to. It's very tragic what happened. And honestly, I wouldn't blame Virginia if the football team decided to not play this season at all, just to give themselves more time to overcome the grief that they were stricken with. But if they want to play football to take their minds off it, that's fair too. But anyway, I have Virginia Tech going 8-4, which is a great bounce back year from last year. I think this proves that the program is back on track. And it'll be a great season for Brent Pry to build off of again. And I think people will start to say that Virginia Tech just might be back, and that's really good for the ACC. I haven't talked about this too much, but the ACC really needs to be a successful football conference. They need about 4 or 5 teams every year to be competing for the conference championship, of course, but also for national prominence, winning non-conference games against Power 5 teams. So this year I have 2 teams winning double-digit games in the regular season, which are Florida State and Clemson. And then I have 3 9-win teams, NC State, Pittsburgh, and Miami. And then below that, I have 3 8-4 teams, Georgia Tech, Duke, and Virginia Tech. And I think that's a really good spread of win-loss totals for that number of teams. So I want to thank everyone for watching. I want to thank everyone who subscribed. And I will see you in the next video, which will be the final season preview video for the 2023 football season, which will be Wake Forest.